Turning around, he saw a creature no bigger than a cat. Her smiling face was full of small, sharp teeth. Small hands and feet were dancing in some kind of dance when she was looking at the scene below. She was wheezing like crazy. When he moved away, something looked at him with disgust, with small, malicious eyes. Then, with an even wider smile, she made a squeak, calling other similar creatures. These began to literally materialize from the shadows and crack like gloomy walls. Slippery creatures with horns on their heads crawled from the land on the wall. Clouds of flies and other insects took it as a target. Feeling hatred, he kicked the laughing creature, cracking its body against the wall with a nasty splash. He was running like crazy again. On the walls. No, in the walls. There were people screaming, begging him for mercy. They were literally crawling into the building, begging someone to show mercy and kill them, to end their suffering. More corridors, rooms, the same horror everywhere. Everything seemed to be alive. Everything seemed to be laughing, dancing and rejoicing. In the park, infected people were dancing around a huge tree. A tree that had a face giving rhythm to their song. Mothers carried their own cubs, feeding the pasture in the meadow. Human faces were growing from the branches, all with a grimace of madness. He saw the same thing everywhere. They were scaring the crowd of healthy people, running wherever they could. Infected people eating healthy people and creatures that simply have no right to exist. Black clouds gathered above the governor's building. No, they were the moths of insects. A huge green meadow was laughing wildly in the sky. Even the sky above their heads was infected. It must have been a bad dream. A nightmare. It just couldn't be real. He felt something was holding him by the hand. The twisted meadow didn't look like a human face. Maybe it used to be a dog, and now he didn't even know how to describe it. His long tongue was licking at his side, and his claws were deepening in his hand. He pulled out his gun and shot a few times from the side, seeing how it was falling apart and connecting to his eyes again. The walls behind him were literally starting to move. Everywhere he ran, eyes and hands were growing, wanting to catch him. Hands begging for mercy, as well as those who were smilingly calling for him to join them. Passing the nearest square, he saw that the great warriors in rotten armor were leaning over the fallen T-12 troops sent to them by the Last Hope. They were pulling something out of them, scratching the corpses. He saw how the beautiful red armor was methodically opened with rusty knives, and the bodies were torn apart with dirty fingers. With triumph, one of these warriors cursed something small, high above his head. Moles, mucous membranes and eyes grew out of his armor. The rest of the corpses were eaten by small creatures running around everywhere. They were tearing out each other's stasis pieces, turning over and pushing like mischievous children. They didn't stop their play, while the servants and monsters were carrying the next T-12 bodies to the warriors. Captain John was nailed to the stone altar, built of a collapsed piece of wall. He was still alive. Despite the terrible wounds, he was still alive. Something was moving in him, literally in him, under his skin. The whole thing was wavering when his body was tearing apart and the scum was pouring out on the floor. A single hand suddenly grew out of his stomach, reaching his fingers towards the sky. A monstrous face was forming from the elbow and the arms. He was running again. He didn't want to. He just didn't want to look at it any longer. So that's how those who came to help him ended up. Basements. If he gets there, then maybe. Exactly. What? Why would he need a weapon? What would he do with it? What's the point of running any further? Everyone here will die and be devoured. Tears were running down his face. Just a few meters behind him, dozens of paths were stumbling, shortening the distance. He really wanted to give up. He wanted to stop and die. But he was afraid. He was so afraid. His own suffocating body, the lack of oxygen forced him to keep running. It was getting dark in his eyes. He saw the entrance to the basement. Too far. It was the end. He didn't want to run anymore. He had had enough. He wanted to die. But he was so afraid of death. He was afraid that instead of death, he would join those who were suspended between him and life. Those in the walls, and those dancing. Fall! A cry was heard. His own body made the order, immediately, without hesitation, just as they had been teaching him for years. The roar of the cannonade of shots lasted a long time. From the window and the door of the building, several people were constantly shooting, until the chasing, laughing, arrogant creatures stopped moving. After all, 2 people with plasma blowguns ran out, covering everything with a blue flame. They burned the bodies, from which a cloud of green flies was flying out. But are you alive? I thought.